Thank you for joining us for this month's Vertical IQ Industry Focus, where we look in detail at various sectors of the national economy, highlighting those industries that are doing well and those where the reality is less bright. Industry Focus is presented by Vertical IQ's Chief Economist, Ingo Winsor. Ingo was the founder of Local Market Monitor, is a graduate of MIT and Boston University, and he's not your typical economist. He presents data from a very practical business perspective and doesn't mind avoiding cautious conclusions. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ingo.
Thank you very much, Julie. Every month we look at industries in a specific sector of the U.S. economy, how they're doing, and how they may be affected by current developments. Our focus this month is on the energy sector, which affects almost all other parts of the economy. It's especially relevant at this time because of the rapid rise in energy costs associated with the war in Iran. Even though the U.S. is the world's largest producer of crude oil and exports more than it imports, it can't control the price of oil. And the price of oil affects the price of other natural energy sources like natural gas. Because energy is so deeply embedded in the economy, we first need to see how the economy is doing. The best way to measure economic activity is by how many jobs are being created. Jobs means consumers, and consumers are the U.S. economy. Here we see the percent increase in jobs every month compared to the same month of the previous year. And it's clear that economic activity has been growing at a steadily slower pace for the last couple of years, from 1.5% at the beginning of 2024 to virtually zero today. Even without the recent spike in energy costs, there's a good chance that this growth would have turned negative, but that's almost certain to happen now. Here's a picture of crude oil prices each month in the past year in dollars per barrel. It's shown for a particular grade of oil in a particular place, but it's essentially the same all around the world. In almost a copy of job growth, the price was steadily decreasing during the last 2 years as the U.S. economy, like others around the world, was slowing. That's why the recent sharp price increase will have a supersized effect, increasing the cost of almost everything at a time when the U.S. economy is already in a delicate position. Before we look at industries most directly affected by oil prices, let's first consider the other big energy sources in the U.S. Here's the job situation for the mining of surface coal, which now accounts for most coal production in the U.S. For a while now, surface coal miners have been laying off workers at a high rate. The same is true for underground mines, many of which will probably close down in the next few years. One of the main reasons for less use of coal is the greater use of natural gas, which has become more abundant and cheaper with fracking technology. The largest use of natural gas and of coal is to power steam turbines that create electricity. It's also used in industries, businesses, and homes. Unlike crude oil, whose price can change overnight, most natural gas is sold under long-term contracts that allow price increases, but more slowly. Natural gas is also used as a raw material in the production of industrial gases like methane, ethane, and propane, and to produce nitrogen fertilizers. Here we see that fertilizer production in the U.S. was already high in 2025 and will probably increase this year. Natural gas is one of the main costs in the manufacture of cement, firing large furnaces that transform crushed limestone into cement powder. And natural gas is now the main source of electricity generation. Coal-fired electric plants still account for a 20% share, but that will continue to shrink. And nuclear power provides 20%, and renewables like wind, solar, and hydroelectric provide the rest. Here we see how much electricity is produced each month. It varies throughout the year, rising in midsummer for air conditioning and in midwinter for heat and lighting, and steadily increasing each year. With a warmer climate, the demand for electricity will continue to grow, quite aside from the large amounts needed for the recent rash of data centers being built. This higher demand for electricity is reflected in the growth of jobs to manufacture turbines, transformers, and other electrical equipment. After a huge surge of demand in 2024, the current rate of growth may seem small, but it's still a very strong 4 to 5%. Now let's look at the industries most directly affected by higher oil prices. Here's a picture of U.S. oil production each month over the last 2 years, which shows a seasonal cycle, but was clearly higher in 2025. Fracking technology boosted U.S. oil production enormously and contributed to the steady decrease in oil prices in recent years. The industry most directed by oil prices, of course, is oil well drilling. Here we see the jobs were down sharply in 2024, but are now on the rise again. Jobs in pipeline construction, on the other hand, will probably be less affected because most of these are long-term projects. Job growth at oil refineries fell to zero with the cooling of the economy last 2 years and is sharply negative since the Iran war. It's difficult to separate the effects of the slumping U.S. economy from the suddenly higher cost and lower supplies of crude oil. Refiners are tuned to process a particular grade of crude oil in terms of density and sulfur content and can't easily adjust to a different supply. And they also can't just pass higher costs along to their to their customers. For example, to manufacturers of petrochemicals like benzene, ethylene, and propylene, which are building blocks for a large number of other products, including plastics. Job growth in this industry was already negative in 2025 due to slow demand and will probably shrink even more with the higher prices. On the other hand, jobs at gas stations are largely unaffected by higher gas prices because most people and businesses can't cut back on the amount of driving they do. Construction of new gas stations is the main reason for job growth in this industry. The same is largely true for jobs at airlines and air freight businesses. Sudden price changes don't immediately affect the volume of demand for their services, but permanent price changes will have dramatic effects. Airlines in particular exist on a very slim financial margin and have no choice but to pass higher costs directly to the customers. The trucking industry is even more precarious because of changing logistics practices by Amazon, Walmart, and other big retailers who have centralized, streamlined, and expanded their own distribution systems. Jobs in trucking have been dropping for years. Higher fuel prices on top of these changes and a slowing economy will see even more consolidation in this industry. The downstream effect on manufacturers of trucks was already clear, with jobs sharply down in 2025. The last industry we'll take a look at is car dealers, which are far enough downstream from the immediate price of energy to show how higher energy costs will ultimately affect consumers. The picture of jobs at dealerships is almost the same as for jobs in the economy as a whole, growing at 1.5% at the start of 2024 and now close to zero. High interest rates, high car prices, and deteriorating consumer finances have already produced slower demand for cars. Delinquency rates on car loans are already at near record highs. Higher prices for gas on top of that, a cost that they can't do without, will make consumers even more unsure about their future economic circumstances. Car dealers would see the consequences immediately because their products are so expensive. Other industries may not feel them for a while, but it's very likely that the effects won't just reverse if gas prices come down again, because the surge in energy costs is just one more element in a changing U.S. economy. That's it. In this time of uncertainty, it's important for bankers and investors to stay on top of developments that affect the fortunes of their customers. Vertical IQ provides the data and analysis they need with detailed industry profiles in 330 metro markets. Thanks very much for following along. This is our monthly Vertical IQ industry focus. I'm Ingo Winsor.